Hey, what's up, guys? I'm making this video in response to a request I had. And the viewer actually asked me to make a video on how to succeed in life after prison. And I gave it a little bit of thought, and it's a very difficult answer and a complex one. It's not something that's easy to explain. There are a lot of things that had to take place in order for me to be where I am today. But I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. I'm going to start my answer by giving you guys the unfortunate reality and truth about this type circumstance. And it is that the majority who go through the system and are processed and actually serve, some actual time in the prison system don't make it. That is the reality. That is the truth. So we need to start from there and, work our way towards hopefully being able to be one of the few that make it. So one of the main obstacles that you'll find in trying to change your life from one of criminality in prison to one of being a normal citizen is that the punishment of prison itself doesn't end when you walk out. So people have this mindset that, the minute you walk out of prison, everything is great and you're free and celebrate and it's all good times. It's not true. And the punishment continues in the sense that, you're not going to be able to get a job. This is one of the most difficult things to understand about having been processed and convicted of a crime. You are permanently blacklisted from legal employment. From the majority of any job opportunities available to everyone else, you are automatically ineligible. They won't even talk to you. No matter how good you are at anything else, no matter what you bring to the table, you're out. So that is really the biggest obstacle. But second to that is that you're also criminally disqualified from receiving any kind of government aid, federal benefits for housing, for education, medical, whatever it is, you're out. So when you start thinking about it, here's a person who just came out of prison. That in itself being a very difficult thing to endure, emotionally, psychologically, and physically. But now he's out, and we put him in the free world, and we expect that he learned his lesson and that he's going to do good and contribute now, but we take away all the tools that would allow him to make that transition into what we want him to be. We're not even allowing him the opportunity. And so these are the hard realities that you have to realize, prisoners deal with upon release. So that being the most obvious, but the second part I'd like to touch on is the part that you don't really see. And that's the internal, the emotional and the psychological difficulty of making that transition. For me, it was very, very difficult. And, my time away in that chapter of my life went on for a very long time, but it's been over for a long time as well. And I'm still suffering the emotional consequence of a lot of that shit that happened. So I'm the first to admit, as strong as I believe myself to be and as capable of bearing extreme burdens and surviving and always getting up again, I'll admit that stuff fucked me up. It really, really did. Especially as a juvenile going through the system, at that very early age, it really messed me up. And I can't speak for anybody else, but I can only assume that it messed up a lot of other people also. And for me, part of the difficulty was, being in environments where I was always at danger. I was always in danger. There was always a threat, an immediate threat, every single fucking day, every minute of every day. There were times where I couldn't even shower. I had to have, gang members, my people with me with weapons, escorting me to the shower and standing outside the shower with knives, waiting to fucking go to war because things were so volatile and about to explode at any minute. So I'm sharing this with you to try to give you an idea, a perspective of what I'm talking about. I had to become something in there that I didn't want to become. I had to become something that most people would fear. Most people would not understand. And the reason you do not understand it is because you're not in that element. You're not forced to make those decisions that I had to make, like others as well. Where you realize that nothing matters about what I want, what I hope, what I wish. All that matters is this is my reality. I am in this jungle, and there are predators here. There are dangerous fucking people here that want to hurt me and want to take from me. What am I going to do? How am I going to live? Am I going to be a victim, or am I going to survive no matter what and never, ever let any fucking man take my pride from me? I chose the latter. In doing that, I had to do things that I'm not happy about. But I don't regret, because I know that it wasn't by choice. That's just the shit that had to happen. And I had to shed blood. And that's part of it. I'm saying all this so you guys can understand that having to become something like that, and having to endure a long period of time, years, like that, and then being removed and put into this big open free world where that kind of behavior is frowned upon and is criminal and will put you right back into that cage again, it's a very, very difficult adjustment. There are different rules that exist. The way society has rules, there are legal rules, there are moral rules that people recognize. In jails and prisons, there are our own set of rules in there. Call it what you want. Criminal law, criminal conduct, gang rules, whatever. Street code, whatever you want to call it. But according to those rules, my life, my upbringing, if a man disrespects me, just disrespect, it could be a fucking word, a suggestion, I have to act. That's the reality of that life. And act doesn't mean that I'm going to go say, hey man, I heard you say, no, none of that bullshit. I'm going to put a fucking knife in him. I'm going to fucking stab the shit out of him. That is the reality of jails and prisons. It may not be for everybody, but that was my reality. That was my reality in the streets, just with guns instead of knives. So it's a difficult, difficult adjustment. And most people I work with now, coming out of the jail systems, can't make that adjustment. They can't go from having to live by that set of rules where it's expected of you to respond violently, brutally to any form of disrespect, to now being out in the streets and people just running their mouth talking crazy. People on the fucking internet talking shit to you, saying, fuck you, piece of shit, motherfucker. It's craziness. In our world, that doesn't exist. So most guys can't make that adjustment. They're going to do exactly what is in their nature to do when confronted with that situation, and that's shed blood. And we were taught that. So there are a lot of different reasons why it's very difficult to make it. I spent some time now discussing those. I'll now touch on some of the reasons and causes to my own success, what I would attribute it to. And first, and foremost, I've been extremely blessed, extremely blessed in so many ways. So I'm very grateful and thankful, and I always recognize, how fortunate I am in that regard. So that's the first thing. But second to that, I made a decision that I'm going to do whatever I have to do in life to make it. Whatever. How hard I have to work, how little I have to sleep, how far I have to travel, whatever. I made that decision. I also have the discipline to back that shit up. It's not enough to make the decision. Anybody can make that decision because, it sounds great. But to back it up and to do it day in, day out, it's very difficult. I also was extremely fortunate in the sense that I was able to borrow some money. I had a lot of respect that I maintained my whole life in the street, and I had to utilize some contacts that I had, from my prior life, but I took a huge risk. I took a huge risk, and I rolled the dice, and I borrowed a lot of money, and I put it on the table, and I invested it in a business, and I invested it in myself. I gambled it on myself 100%. It could have gone wrong. It could have backfired. It could have cost me my life, that fucking money. But it didn't. And the point is that I had to be willing to take ridiculous risks because of the obstacles that I now had in front of me that other people don't have. I'm not competing on an even playing field here with everybody else as far as the job market, as far as making money. I'm at a huge, huge disadvantage forever, for the rest of my life. That's my reality. So in knowing that, I have to accept that for me to make it, I can never compare myself to the regular man, to the average person. I can only address what the regular man does and acknowledge that I need to do much, much fucking more. So where the regular man quits and tires and can't take any more, I need to fucking push much, much further than that because he's starting way ahead of me. So willingness to work, willingness to sacrifice, willingness to take risks. These are the only ways that I know of to make it after that kind of life, after prison. Most of the people that I know have failed. Most of the guys I know that came out of prison died or went back to prison. They can't make it. So for you out there, for you who's asking the question, if this applies to you, start by accepting that this is a fucking uphill battle that you caused, your own creation. Just like I created this shit for myself, you created it for you. That's the first part of this process. Acknowledging what it is and what has to happen and forgetting about if it's fair or not. It is what it is. And then making the decision that you're going to do whatever is necessary and required to move forward and achieve what you want. The last point I'm going to talk about is a very, very important point to this conversation and to many others. And it's about ego. Pride and ego, in my opinion, are a man's worst enemy. Mine especially, I know. Ego can destroy a person. The opposite of ego is humility. Humility is absolutely necessary for any person who's going to come out of that kind of environment and make a transition successfully into the real free society. You have to humble yourself. You have to be willing to take a little bit of what you think is disrespect and eat it and shut your fucking mouth and continue in your work. You have to be humble. Ego doesn't work. The ego that we have is a false sense of ego. The ego that I had before was false. It was based on me being a fucking gangster in the street and walking around with guns and people fearing me and bullshit. The crazy shit that I was doing. That's not real. It wasn't ever real. But it was real enough for me that I would kill for it if I felt it was disrespected or violated in any way. So think about these things, and understand that you're not going to start at the top, ever. Ever. You're always going to start at the bottom. I had to start at the bottom and eat a lot of shit and do a lot of things that I didn't want to do and humble myself and keep my mouth shut when I wanted to flip the fuck out and curse people out and get crazy. I couldn't. I couldn't because I knew that this is the price I have to pay for my mistakes and for me to overcome those mistakes and start a new life and get a chance at a better chapter in my book of life. I have to do these things. So there's a lot more, that goes into this conversation. Like I said in the beginning, there are so many factors and variables. Most will not make it, is the bottom line. And I hope, if this does apply to you out there, that you're one of the few. Be one of the minority. Be the one who fucking sets the standard and shows others that it is possible, that it can be done, that nothing is impossible. So I hope this video helped in some way and answered some of your questions, and I'll talk to you guys next time.